Tony Kinnett.
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 Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's get down to business.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC out of Indianapolis. It's good to be with you no matter where you're joining us this evening because, believe it or not, the biggest news of the day is the left's complete and utter political suicide in front of the entire country. Now, look, of course, we have RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard's confirmations, Kash Patel heading to the floor of the Senate for the final vote. We have Linda McMahon's confirmation hearing, possible peace talks, a massive delegation with Russia and Ukraine. And look, of course, we're going to talk about the tariffs, but hear me out. Please, hear me out just for a McMoment here. The left's complete and utter self-destruction is so wholly unnecessary for the entire part of the Democratic Party, the Green Party, and basically the entire political left. The reason I say it's unnecessary, not that it's unlikely, but that it's unnecessary, is that right now, there really are things that they could point to that, while I would really disagree with some of the ways that one might argue these points, they could say, well, look, we don't really like how Trump is doing this. We might be willing to work with Trump if he would just come to us. Would it be a strong argument? No. But are they even trying decent arguments? Absolutely not. And it all has to do with Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency. So a lot of attorneys general are banding together in blue states and they are suing Elon Musk and DOGE for something. Elon Musk has not exercised any kind of executive power. He has only acted in the independent commission power that a president of the United States has the complete constitutional authority to give. And what has he given Elon Musk and the DOGE team, the Department of Government Efficiency team, the authority to do? Well, I'm glad you asked, hypothetical person, because what Trump gave them the power to do in DOGE is to do one thing and one thing only. Read the receipts of where government money is going to. And then, thing and a half, give those things to the American people. That's really it. That's all that they are doing. Now, after that, whatever the cabinet secretaries recommend as far as cutting or kind of closing down certain parts of organizations or shuffling them around, that's on the Trump administration itself. But here's where the left completely fails. So while the Department of Government Efficiency is actually really popular among Americans, it's moving through the federal government like Leonardo DiCaprio through a college sorority. And it has uncovered waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayer dollars. This is where the left fails. They don't want to admit what the Department of Government Efficiency is finding. They don't. They refuse to admit that what is being unearthed is on social media comments from high up atop the loftiest chains of the Democrat power and the elite, those in the Senate Democrats' wings, for example, or all the way down to the lowest reply guy on social media with an anonymous picture and a bunch of letters and numbers after his name. All are saying the same thing. Where is this waste, fraud, and abuse? What are you talking about? And they are whistling past the graveyard because there are definitive, objective examples of waste, fraud, and abuse. And if anyone tells you that there isn't, they are either accidentally or on purposely stupid. Waste. Hundreds of millions of dollars have gone to outdated systems like hand filing federal employee retirement accounts in old limestone mines and the staffing that goes with it. Not to mention massive salaries to NGO or non-government organization leaders. For example, a $1.2 million salary to the CEO of National Fish and Wildlife Foundation every single year. Why are you and I paying for someone's $1.2 million salary? I don't know. And those on the left can't tell you either. They don't even want to admit it's there, but it's not just waste, it's fraud. For example, the massive amounts of spending that has been rerouted away from its original purpose to go into places that we are told isn't there in the first place. That's fraud. Like the millions of dollars, the $59 million that went from the Federal Emergency Management Agency to housing illegal migrants in New York City, or housing FEMA officials in fancy hotels when they go abroad in a natural disaster site. Even the New York Times, though very begrudgingly, admits 43 paragraphs down on a February 3rd hit piece on Elon Musk that the federal government lost $236 billion to apparent fraud and improper payments in 2023 alone. And that's with 6 of the bylined reporters confirming that. There's not just waste and fraud, there's also abuse, money heading to organizations and causes which have absolutely nothing to do with the mission statement in the first place, or, and here's the key, the congressional underlining of the allotted funds. So the Democrats are making a big stink right now that, oh, Trump isn't allowing money to flow into places where Congress paid it to. I hate to break it to you, but Congress has not actually allotted tons of money to specifically put transgender web pages up on the National Institute of Health website. That's not a thing. But you're certainly going to be told so. You can see $2.7 trillion in various abuses in Medicare and Medicaid overseas to people who should not have received it since 2003. That's $2.7 trillion. And DOGE is continually pointing this out. Now, this afternoon, they've entered the Internal Revenue Service building. You know, where individuals like you and I are flagged if we send one another $600. We're flagged for investigation. Or the IRS when they're investigating Christian charity organizations or churches. The IRS is now under the eye of DOGE, and Democrats cannot stand it. So how are they handling it? Well, they're losing it. They're losing it on air, off air, everywhere. Did you like the wordplay there? They don't know what to claim about DOGE. They don't really know why it's bad. They don't know how to answer basic questions about DOGE. Today, I was opposite a couple of Democratic panelists in various news programs, and it was amazing to watch them cling to the most random details about Elon Musk. That is, if they're not breaking into song like the members of some federal employee union did. And it's really painful, but it's necessary you hear how the left is coping with the exposure of waste, fraud, and abuse.
Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against DOGE. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon scab within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
Okay, hot take. If you're going to sing, do it well. If you're going to sing, do it well. Number 2, don't be cringy. And I swear the left cannot figure this out. And if they're not just getting out there and singing that they're fighting DOGE or they're giving weird, awkward acronyms to it, they're bringing together leftist, George Soros-funded NGO heads like Dylan Hetler-Gadet, the director of government affairs for the Project on Government Oversight, which, by the way, has never actually disclosed any kind of oversight they have done to the federal government, who tells everyone, yeah, I mean, sure, the money's not being spent correctly, but that doesn't mean it's waste, fraud, and abuse.
Waste is different from fraud. Fraud is different from abuse, and abuse is different from both. When we talk about improper payments, they are a subset of those other 3 categories. But that doesn't tell us the whole picture either. Sometimes improper payments are a function of bad record keeping. Sometimes they are a function of outdated information technology systems. Sometimes they come about through human error, and sometimes they come about through negligence. There are a variety of reasons why improper...
I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. It was not human error that millions of dollars were sent to start a transgender comic book series in South America or to spread atheism in Nepal. Those are targeted, directed, specific programs that were fully funded without the consent of Congress. We're going to sit here and pretend that, it's like a secretary accidentally wrote a 0 instead of an 8. What are you going to do? Not even close. We'll be back with the radio crowd here in a couple of minutes to talk about some of the confirmation hearings with the live streams over on YouTube and X, which I'm going to be honest, it's probably where you should be watching. We're going to talk about the Democrats in Congress just jumping the shark. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, live stream crew, we've got a few more amazing clips. The Democrats in Congress aren't handling this any better because while the Dems should be focused on building a new coalition for that working American class they claim to love so much but completely ignore to pay for their mansions, the Democrats are still desperately focused on racism, sexism, fascism, homophobia, globophobia, Gulfophobia, whatever. The same nonsense that all of the corporations are ditching because it makes $0 are the target of Representative Schakowsky from Illinois when she decided that it would be good to talk about how the word manufacturing was sexist. Yes, this is the squeaky wheel that needed the grease.
Yesterday, I met with a manufacturing company, but they also are engaged in getting young people more engaged in manufacturing. So I asked them, so how many of those students that are signing up and want to do this, how many are women? And they said, well, I know there's at least 13% or something. It was a low number. And you had mentioned trying to engage more women in manufacturing. I'm just wondering if just the name manufacturing sounds like a guy.
Oh, man, because it's manufacturing. See, we'd call it womanufacturing, but we usually reserve that term for making up problems that don't exist. So in this particular instance, yeah, please keep on with this. Then Joy Behar went off about the Native Americans and the naming of America.
In that case, this country that we're in was settled by indigenous people, right? Mm-hmm. And yet they named the country after an Italian white man, Amerigo Vespucci.
Yeah.
That's what America is named after. Amerigo Vespucci, a white European. Why is it named after a white man?
Well, let me ask
it was settled by indigenous people.
Well, let me just add some color, because I didn't know how common it was. Sorry, color, context, all the things.
Oh, they're so insufferable. By the way, congrats on Italians for being white. It's amazing how that completely reversed throughout history. So way to go, Italians, I guess. Also, indigenous people did not settle the United States. I'm so sick of the fake Native American history that constantly pervades in the left's rewriting of history. I would like to remind the boys, girls, and squirrels out there that as far as any individual in this entire country can confirm, by every historical record, that the Native American tribes were constantly conquering, reconquering, and re-reconquering each other all the time. And all of the, again, all of the crazy insanity that goes with it. So the idea that, we actually should be naming it, get out of here. Get out of here. It's just so silly. Last but not leastly here as we get ready for the next segment, I am particularly fond of watching CNN lose it because President Donald Trump is answering questions, and then those over on the left are pretending that Biden was some kind of an amazing orator. That said, the radio crew is getting ready to come back from commercial break, so we'll make sure to pick them back up to talk a little bit more about this. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right, now that everyone out there from the radio parts to the TV parts to that wonderful live stream crew is back with us here on the Tony Kinnett Cast, we can talk about some of the mavericks to this administration. Now, I'll be real. I didn't get to spend as much time talking about the meltdown of the left to include the CNN clip. So we might stick around for a little bit of bonus tonus later and back up over it. In the meantime, the Trump administration is likely one of the most ideologically diverse in American history. Seriously, you have individuals who are on the more traditional conservative side, like Kristi Noem. You have individuals that are more on the populist conservative side, like J.D. Vance. individuals that are more on the establishment Republican side, which I would argue that Scott Bessent certainly hails from that area. And then you have, of course, some individuals that were traditionally on either the more green left, like Tulsi Gabbard, and then the more populist and at times the kind of pseudo-corporatist left that RFK Jr. was on. Now those individuals are in the Trump administration. And it is something to behold. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Was passed through the Senate with 52 votes. Those would be all of the Republicans, but Senator Mitch McConnell. And he gave his acceptance speech, and it was really, really endearing. Check it out.
I want to begin by thanking President Trump for giving me this extraordinary opportunity. And I want to introduce my family and thank them for being here. My wife, Cheryl, my cousin, Anthony Shriver, my daughter, Kik, my other daughter, Kira, Catalina Shriver, Joey Shriver, Jackson Hines, and Amaryllis Kennedy. And I want to thank all of you for your support and throughout this whole 2.5-year journey. My first time in this Oval Office was in 1961, and I came here to meet or 1962. I came here and I had a meeting with my uncle, who was president then, where we talked about the environment. He was involved deeply, as we all know, in restoring physical fitness in this country. He challenged at one point during his administration, he challenged Americans to do a 50-mile walk, which I ultimately did. But I remember the day that my father completed his walk.
So he talks a lot about, again, his aspirations to make America more healthy, more fit again. I will say it is just nice to have someone in charge of this agency that actually looks the part. I mentioned this on Merritt Street this morning, that I think a lot of Americans are tired of the individual in charge of the Health and Human Services Department, just really looking like a lot of our gym teachers did. You know, unhealthy, obese, dude in a dress. No, thank you. And now we actually have an individual who walks the walk, and again is empowering a lot of Americans to take a second look at the ingredients label. And with the Trump administration oversight, again, I think a lot of the fear-mongering about RFK and what he's going to be able to do, we haven't really seen any agency heads so far acting alone and kind of running out and doing their own thing yet. That was a Biden administration thing when you didn't even have an executive who was compos mentis. Then we get over to Linda McMahon's hearing, which was really, really excellent. To head the Department of Education, to start scaling that back, also encouraging the freedom of a family financially to be able to send their child where they want to send them, not mandated by their zip code, and all of it culminating with the ultimate failure of Jimmy Carter's Department of Education. Check it out.
The bottom line is because it's not working. Department of Education was set up in 1980, and since that time we have spent almost $1 trillion, and we have watched our performance scores continue to go down. I do believe that it is a responsibility to make sure that our children do have equal access to excellent education. I think that that is best handled at the state level, closest to the states, working with state administrators, teachers, parents, who should have input into their curriculum.
Again, a parent-centric administration appears to be where we're headed. And that can only be a net good, to have a Department of Education secretary who focuses on parental involvement is something this country has not culturally had because we've been too busy having Miguel Cardona up, everyone lecturing us all about pronouns and inclusivity of things that don't matter. And McMahon points this out. The Department of Education failed, and it failed miserably.
But Senator, I must say, we have failed in our mission. We are not delivering the kind of education that we need to deliver to our children. I believe, as does the president, the best education is closest to the child, that parents and school officials who understand the needs of those children in those communities can best direct the education of those states, and states will be competitive. Governors have put in programs, for school choice, et cetera, and looking and what kind of results, are we seeing? I was heartened by the state of Louisiana in the recent NAEP scores that came out, that they had brought up their reading and their math scores by a considerable percentage because they went back to basics. They were teaching children to read and write. And
again, the Louisiana system of school choice, kind of an early pioneer, kind of a weird hybrid in that situation. Cade Brumley, state superintendent over in Louisiana, is a good friend. He's done a phenomenal job getting Louisiana students the kind of education that they need, not the kind that activists want to give them. And we could talk about Senator Maggie Hassan, the Democrat from New Hampshire, Senator Patty Murray, Democrat from Washington, who were annoying and silly and went on loud rants about how I guess that Linda McMahon is going to shovel special education kids into a massive gravel pit or whatever, which is totally ridiculous. But instead, I just want to show you who the brilliant individuals that showed up to protest were. So we start off with the master, in this case, the teacher.
Very good. Let me ask you about...
The senator will suspend.
He's a teacher.
The committee will come to order. Capitol Police are asked to remove the individual from the hearing room.
Oh, for education. Great. Yes, thank you. Excellent stuff. Well, no worries, ladies and gentlemen, because the pupils also showed up to deliver calm, reasonable protest. And the resume, it certainly does impress.
yes.
Fantastic.
Capitol Police are asked to remove the individual from the hearing room. I'm not sure it's going to matter, but I'm going to remind members of the audience that disruptions are not to be permitted while the committee...
I love that. I am a public school graduate. Hey, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Just wonderful. Tulsi Gabbard as well has been confirmed and has been sworn in by President Trump. We're now in the position to see Kash Patel, who did pass the Senate committee vote. It does look like that is going to the floor, which is 110% where that should be going. Allison, I think we can send you radio folks over to the break, and we will catch you guys in just a second. This is the Tony Kinnett cast here on The Daily Signal.
Greetings.
All right, on the matter of Tulsi Gabbard and foreign policy in general, because the Maverick administration is not just sitting at the White House, sitting in Washington, D.C., going to seminars and being told, oh, how wonderful and amazing and super duper they are. That's not the case. Right now, you have a coalition, not coalition is not the right word. You have a delegation, that's the word I was looking for, of Vice President J.D. Vance, who is heading over to Munich, Germany, for what looks like a serious peace conference with a delegation from Russia and Ukraine to begin the process of ending the Russo-Ukraine war. Trump has talked a lot about speaking with Zelensky, with Vladimir Putin, and really starting to outline what the world is going to look like post the Russo-Ukrainian war. I was struck by something that's kind of funny. So if you're over the age of 35, you're probably not going to get this particular reference, and my apologies in advance. I couldn't help but notice that the last time that the Vice President of the United States and a couple of U.S. officials went to a peace talk with a Russian delegation in Germany, that was in Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, and it ended with the Vice President being kidnapped and Delta Force having to rescue him. Now, is that germane to national news at all? No, but I just think that's kind of funny. Yeah, that's it. That's the whole rabbit trail there. I don't know, just some kind of references I think are, I don't know, kind of on the nose. In all seriousness, though, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has done a phenomenal job working with other international leaders, other international partners and adversaries to advance the interests of the United States. This is someone who was seeing it for a long time as a more moderate Republican, at least moderate is in pseudo-antagonistic to Trump for a good time. And now Rubio is coming hot off the heels of his South American and Central American tour, where he was able to get Panama to step completely away from the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, which is the Communist Party of China's method of kind of getting into other countries, second world countries and developing nations, by providing cheap infrastructure and goods through really shady trade deals. In essence, it's trying to corner up all of the markets that the United States is not playing in. And I was told that if Trump was going to go in and start cutting the U.S. aid transgender plays to Colombia, and he's also going to start hacking and slashing the expeditions of condoms to Africa and things like that, then, oh man, I mean, the world was just going to fall apart. China, we were going to wake up and everyone was going to be speaking Mandarin. Now, Secretary Marco Rubio has done a rather phenomenal job on what I can only imagine is Rubio walking into the room, telling everyone else to leave with the other world leader. He sits down, he leans forward, and he just starts talking in like really threatening Spanish. I'm just guessing that's how, with the Cuban accent, it just like perfect. And speaking of really excellent Cuban accents that are slightly threatening, but mostly just fantastic, we're going to head over to Jerry Lopez for some awful tweets, one of our favorite segments over here. God knows that the really, really horrible social media posts are out to play, and we're going to dig into them. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal.
Awful tweets, the ones that no one ever deletes. Awful tweets on the Tony Kinnett Show.
On 93 WIBC.
All right, welcome to Awful Tweets, where Jerry Lopez, he's Indie Spanglish over on X, we sit down and we peruse all of the festering garbage that you have shoved into the inboxes of our social media accounts. Doesn't just have to be tweets. It can be, what are the other ones, Jerry? We've got Facebook, Instagram.
We even had Nextdoor app one time.
Yeah, and Nextdoor, you complain about your neighbors or something. Outlet titles, from different news publications. Blue Sky. Oh, goodness, you could do entire segments on the goofballs over at Blue Sky. Well, Jerry, are you ready to dig in to some of the stinkiest of the stinky?
Hey, I'm ready to get after it, Tony.
All right. Well, this first one's from Rick Warren, a rather controversial pastor theologian. He's got some discount heresy for us. He says, John 19:18, and they crucified Jesus with two others, one on each side and Jesus in the middle. The guys on both sides were thieves. If you're looking for the real Jesus, not a caricature disfigured by partisan motivations, you'll find him in the middle, not on either side. What do you think, Jerry? Is that real scriptural for you?
Hey, really, really odd that he didn't add how that kind of story ended, right? Like, you will not find Jesus in the middle. Jesus tells you exactly what side you need to be on. To be in the middle is to be human and to be partisan. And to think this guy's a pastor is even worse.
Actually, I think the real scripture is that if you are either hot or cold, in other words, if you're in the middle, you're lukewarm, he'll spew you out of his mouth, is the actual word in the New Testament. Also, just as a funny side note, the thief on the right begs for repentance, and when he dies, he goes to heaven. So I don't know, one of those things is just kind of funny that way. All right, this one's from Senator Amy Klobuchar. She says, make no mistake, the reason cancer research is on the chopping block now is because the Trump administration is looking for money to give the tax breaks to the billionaires. And why not pay for it on the backs of kids with cancer? What do you think, Jer?
Yeah, great community note here. Once again, community note for the win. It says the updated NIH guidance would actually direct more money to cancer research. It actually caps the cost at 15% that can go to things that aren't having to do with cancer research. So it actually gives them more money. It seems like she's upset for the wrong reason.
I really do enjoy it when cutting the transgender plays and the massive amounts of fraud actually gives more money to children's cancer research. So. But I thought Biden already cured cancer. Don't you remember? Congressman Jasmine Crockett, my favorite, the show's favorite speedway crackhead, 5 a.m. She says, so it turns out when you don't go woke, you go broke. Trump's new DEI, dying economy and inflation. It's only 2 weeks in and Trump is making America broke again. She shares a Forbes report. The January jobs report reveals weaker growth than predicted, the weakest start to a year since 2016.
First of all, she's like BLM AOC. Like, she is slowly turning into the most annoying person in Congress.
Slowly turning into the most annoying person?
She made it happen very quick, but geez,
she is Thelma and Louising her way to the cliff right now. That woman is revving.
Horrible. Yeah,
so,
but here's the funny part. So she wants to talk about how bad these numbers are. This idiot couldn't even figure out it was reporting on the numbers under Joe Biden. Like, at least finish the article, Crockett. At least finish the article.
Oh, you're assuming she can read in the first place, and that is quite the claim. Well, this next one...
I mean, but to come out and say Trump sucked and then put out numbers that clearly say this is for the guy that just left?
Again,
come on.
The ability to be literate does not bless us all. This next one is from Bushra Shahi. She says, upsetting details emerging of the 28 injured in a Munich attack by a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker. That attack, by the way, is he drove a car through a crowd of people. Anyway, known to police. My thoughts are with those affected and seriously injured in this awful incident. Harming people is never acceptable. However, Germany really needs to get a grip with its increasing demonization of Muslims, ethnic minorities, and migrants. With the racist AfD party on the rise, unfortunately, a symptom of such hate often results in hate. What?
Sounds like harming people is acceptable under certain circumstances. It should actually be expected, is what he's writing. I hate when people say however, because he should have just stopped right there. Harming people is never acceptable. Boom. It's just been done with it. Would have been a great tweet. But whenever you add however, I mean, you're literally going against your point.
I wish I had someone to defend me. Like, the left just viciously defends the fundamentalist Muslim terrorists that routinely kill people. It's like, well, I mean, it reminds me of that Norm Macdonald tweet before he passed away that obviously the worst thing about a nuclear terrorist attack would clearly be the resulting Islamophobia. So, moving on.
To me, it's crazy, Tony. It's crazy to me that you have all these tweets, all these celebrities are on the wrong side of almost everything.
Well,
I don't see how you can be wrong on everything.
Well, they're finding a way. And speaking of where there's a will, there's a way. There was a Chalkbeat, Indiana article about how federal prosecutors are alleging that an Indiana virtual school leadership campaign basically did a little pay to play, tried to curry some favor with some donations. And Jennifer McCormick, the last Democratic candidate for governor here in the state, quoted this and said virtual school officials used money meant for students on Republican donations instead, prosecutors say. And then our mutual buddy, Councilman Harnish, just bodied her. And it's fantastic. I'll read this here. According to the article, this happened in 2018 when McCormick was still the state superintendent of public education.
This buffoon was in charge. This buffoon was, once again, Tony, another Democrat that didn't finish the article. They're talking about you, idiot.
Now, I hate to skip a bunch of great tweets. We may bring them back for next week because we're very much out of time, but I cannot help it. From Vanity Fair. From Vanity Fair. This is just amazing. Of course Luke Skywalker is gay, confirms Mark Hamill, echoing thousands of fan fiction prayers.
I mean, I don't know if Mark Hamill was at a Diddy party, but if it was, he probably said something like, Diddy, I am your father.
So I guess the actual quote is that Mark Hamill said, Luke Skywalker can be whatever sexuality you want him to be. By the way, I think that's really weird. Like, needing people to have like a specific sex life is kind of strange. But I mean, episode 4 was all about Luke asking Han, like, I don't know, she's pretty great. I think she's great. And then it was his sister. I mean, that doesn't mean that he doesn't like girls. Mark Hamill's so insufferable. It's painful.
It sucks to see your childhood heroes turn into adult weirdos.
I knew the second that he drank that weird green alien milk that it was all over. All right, moving along slightly, we'll hit up this Politico article. Analysis: how Democrats were tricked into believing the economy was strong, writes former U.S. Comptroller Eugene Ludwig. Did you know, Jerry, actually, the Democrats weren't lying about the economy being good. They were tricked, Jerry. They were bamboozled, smeckledorfed.
Well, I mean, it would make more sense if they had an article that said how Democrats were tricked into thinking 17 boosters would stop you from getting COVID.
I would have loved to seen one on like ventriloquism that was like how Democrats were tricked into believing Joe Biden was still alive. It's like they installed puppetry mechanics in all rooms of the White House. All right, last one, and I do mean it. This is truly the last one. This is from a lady named Crystal Ball, leftist journo. She quotes an article which is, let's say, very, very shady, and as far as the data inside. It says USAID freeze claims first victims as oxygen supplies are cut off. 71-year-old woman dies after being sent home from USAID funded hospital. And this is in like India or Nepal. It says others die after hospitals close in refugee camps. She says Trump and Elon's cuts are already killing people, Jerry. They're already killing people.
Yeah, no, I seriously doubt that. That lady died when her oxygen cut off herself. I don't think that had anything to do with Elon or Trump whatsoever. The whole thing is ridiculous. This is the party that wanted to hire all these IRS agents to audit us, and now they're mad that we're finding money. Like, make it make sense, Tony.
I don't know if I can, but I did look through some of the rest of the social media posts of this individual after this was sent over to us, and I discovered that she has never once sent out any tweets at all about those dying from exposure in North Carolina or on the streets of Philadelphia or, you know, in like a rest in peace like Laken Riley and the violence that consumes people involved with illegal immigration. So, kind of funny how that always seems to work out that way.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad. Look, we're seeing nothing about what we're doing over there on the FEMA stuff over here on the East Coast with North Carolina, Virginia. None of the great work that's happening at all. It's like it's just gone away.
I think you're right on the money there. Jerry Lopez, he is at Indy Spanglish over on X. Send us your worst, your stinkiest, your most terrible social media posts, and we'll suffer here on air for the amusement and bemusement of those involved. We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
I'm going to level with you guys just a little bit. This segment is going to be just a touch braggadocious. All right, there's no other way to cut it. There's no other way to slice it. I made a bit of a prediction at the end of January because there was this massive story that came out. Oh no, just stop the presses. The Chinese, the communists, have developed this amazing AI, and it's called DeepSeek. Oh, and it's got all these bells and whistles. And they made it for just $6 million. And they say it runs on these way older NVIDIA chips. They don't even need to use that Taiwanese chip, and they don't even need to get a hold of that because of the US embargo. They're using way fewer chips, and they spent way less money on it. And look at all the things DeepSeek can do. It can answer questions really quick. The paragraphs are really lengthy and fulsome. They can take your mom out on a date, and it can clean your laundry and do your taxes and tell you why you keep consistently disappointing your parents. It's awesome. And there was a lot of chaos. The market just went, and there was just a little bit of chaos running in the street. People running back and forth. Oh no, the Chinese have beat us. This is just like Sputnik. Oh, the horror. And I remembered on January 27th, getting on the air and saying something a little different. And wouldn't you know it, Allison, I'm just so petty that I saved that clip, and I am just going to cue it up for everybody out there in the wild blue yonder. Here you go. And then China, which has not showed us where this AI facility is, how many resources it's taking up, or shown us the number of chips in the system that is plugged in, well, we just kind of have to take their word for it. In reality, this is where the prediction comes in. It's far more likely that China has as many of the latest NVIDIA chips as they possibly can, and they have created as big of a system as is feasibly possible for the Chinese to throw into a system. They basically took the idea and the concept of an American AI server, and then they just stapled 2 or 3 of them together. Probably taken up 2 whole cities worth of water to cool it, 3 whole cities worth of power to power it, and a bunch of the new Chinese coal-fired power plants. And it's simply running as quickly as they can. They're overclocking it. According to multiple news outlets and sources from all over, from Taiwanese sources to sources out of India to a couple of whistleblowers in Hong Kong, DeepSeek's miracle claim to have spent just $6 million in developing this revolutionary AI system unraveled completely. A report by Semi-Analysis shows that China has actually spent about $1.6 billion and has tens of thousands of the current NVIDIA graphics processing units. And how did they get them? Well, I happen, if you listen to me just a little bit further on that episode, I said it sounds like China probably went to countries in which they do business. And when the shipping container ship showed up, then individuals who had bought the NVIDIA chips in places where they weren't embargoed loaded the graphics units, the video cards, onto the Chinese container ship, and then they went right back to China and nobody was any the wiser. Wouldn't you know that's just exactly what happened? And what was the reason that I gave you this? I said, because they're communists. They're communists, and communists are liars. I said it very clearly, guys. Communists suck. It's a dictatorship. It's a totalitarian hellhole in which people are exploited with slave labor. There's no innovation coming out of China. Look up any construction video from China. Watch them pour concrete. A swimming pool's worth of concrete with no rebar. The economy is collapsing. It's not surging. The people are struggling. There's unrest in the alternate ethnic regions. China is an absolute... Now, they're not developing brand new amazing AI systems with less... Get out of here. That's not how that works. If you have someone that comes up to you and says, hey, I know that you're driving a car, but by using a couple of urinal cakes, some duct tape, and a unicorn wish, I have found an alternative method of transportation that's way cheaper and way faster. That's going to get you there. You would say, please leave me alone, Jasmine Crockett. I'm just trying to go in Speedway and buy a morning Mountain Dew. The Soviets did the same thing. I know I've talked about this just way too much on the show, that the Soviets did the exact same thing with Foxbat, the MiG-29. They swooped in and they amazed the world. Oh no, the MiG-25 actually, sorry about that. It's the most amazing fighter ever. It's incredible, and it's going to outpace anything that the Americans develop. And then when we finally got our hands on one, when someone defected to the United States via Japan in one, a Soviet pilot, we found out it was a flying hunk of junk. Same thing. Communists are bad at what they do. They are devious. They are liars. That's why American industry needs to be unfettered. That's why I hope that Donald Trump, as the president of the United States, does more to strengthen and impose the United States will on Taiwan. If they're going to have our protection, then they should be doing things the United States wants them to do. Either you're going to be a client state or not. What are you bringing to the table security-wise that is benefiting Americans? And that tariff conversation is going to be another one for another day. But there is just one more I told you so for this particular episode. So, just a couple of days ago, when Trump announced, and we did a whole big breaking news thing, and Allison and I were trying to get the Fox News bell to come back in, because that's what plays on the radio. This Fox News bell, Fox Network comes in. And I said, Trump has announced he wants to own Gaza. And I said, this sounds a lot like Trump's negotiation tactics. Sounds just like Trump is trying to get other nations to jump in who don't want to jump in. And so he's going to say something really outlandish and freak everyone out. And then world leaders are going to start pitching in. Well, according to a Wall Street Journal article, and I was forwarded this by Scott Jennings, who is incredible, just one of the best guys of all time. It appears that several other nations in the Middle East right now, are coming up with alternatives to the President of the United States unpopular plan, they say, of taking over the Gaza Strip. So Egypt has launched a diplomatic blitz to corral support for an Arab-led funded initiative to rebuild the Gaza Strip, setting aside old political concerns in hopes of boxing out a Trump plan that is wildly unpopular across the Arab world. Arab states that once hoped to use their funding capacity to push for a Palestinian state are now under pressure to prevent a mass displacement of Gazans that could and would destabilize any countries pressed to take them in. It's the same strategy again and again because it works. Trump wants something, and so he says something outlandish that he's going to do. Like, hey, what if we take Canada? And then the world goes, oh my gosh, that's insane. They're never going to go for it. Trump, you're crazy. You're insane. It's terrible. The world's going to laugh at you. And then the world leader caves, and Trump gets the original thing that he wanted, which he did not say publicly, because if you say what you initially want, the world knows what not to give you. I swear, like, did people just wake up today and start looking at international politics, financial negotiation strategies? The man wrote a book where it's the first chapter. Come on now. So what's the story of the Maury? If you just relax and sit back and kind of trust the process here, when you don't have a corpse sitting in the White House, but a guy who looks like he's actually done a little bit of preparation, things are probably going to be okay. And why do I bring that up at the present time as we kind of roll out the end of the radio show? You've been hearing a lot of fear-mongering about how the Trump economy is going to skyrocket inflation, it's going to be terrible, and we're all going to pay $437 for a loaf of bread. Nah, ain't going to happen. With that said, thank you very much for tuning in, radio folks. Live stream will continue in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, live stream crew, it's time for just a smidgen of bonus tonus. So for those who are new, here's how bonus tonus works. There is usually something during the massive bombshell, hurricane, dumpster fire, diaper storm of news that is broken throughout the day that I'm not able to get to during the show. Normally, the show goes from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. because when the show started out originally, I was on WIBC only in Indianapolis, and that was my time slot. I wanted to be able to see my wife and kids in the evening and put my kids to bed as well. I had a full-time day job where I was doing investigative work at the Daily Signal. So I would finish work, and then I would do the show, and 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Well, now this has kind of become my main job because of the show's growth. We've developed a really great audience that I'm very thankful for, especially those over in the live stream, keeping the chat nice and warm and nonsensical. And additionally, we've been able to syndicate the show to various other states and networks, and some of them pick up the show at different times. In essence, I now have to cover a lot more stuff. And because I'm able to devote more time to covering more stuff, sometimes there's just too much for me not to just read bullet points of here's what happened, like the Drudge Report back when it was good, to the audience. And so bonus tonus was something created by, I don't know, one of the comments who suggested it. Tonus is a username that I've had on X, I had on high school, I've had forever, and I was never much of a grown-up to change my social media handles. So bonus tonus was born. A little extra time where I cover what I wasn't able to cover during the show. It is not necessarily a normal thing. And I know I'm really taken aback, and I'm very thankful that there are individuals that are in the chat, that are out there, that are watching the show, that enjoy the bonus tonus section. That means a lot. It's not going to be an every night thing because we do try to write the show to actually fit in the segments themselves. So that said, let's get into just a little bit of bonus tonus this evening and talk about Scott Jennings over on CNN just a smidge. Because the left really does not like how they are being shoehorned into you supported Joe Biden, the corpse who never spoke to the press, who never did what he said, who pardoned his entire family preemptively, and is likely going to go down as one of the most unpopular presidents in U.S. history. And we supported a guy who so far is doing a pretty good job. They hate that. And they hate that on the most minute, small things that shouldn't even be things that you're mad about. For example, things that the left almost kind of sort of a little bit, right when Kamala Harris took over the campaign, things that they just started to admit, like maybe Biden's a little bit deader than we thought. Maybe he doesn't actually talk to press or answer questions or talk in complete sentences. And Brian Stelter, who does a phenomenal impression of a potato, over on CNN, who because of my ownership of that particular satire account, had the distinct pleasure of making cry once on national television, which is unfortunately another story for another time. Brian Stelter got very, very grumpy in a panel with Scott Jennings over Biden and Trump and how much they actually spoke with the press. And it's something that maybe should have been just kind of a one-off, but it really keyholes the Democrat actions and attitudes right now and why they really cannot recover as a party whatsoever. So we'll see if we can get that clip pulled up here and bring it forward. Clip 5.
The Biden administration treated the press as poorly as any president has ever treated them, gave them less access, answered no questions, no transparency at any given time. Donald Trump's answered more questions in 3 weeks than Joe Biden answered in 4 years. Elon Musk answered more than
also a lot of the answers.
Come on, Brian.
Also,
this administration is giving the most access to the press they could possibly want.
Just to be clear.
I love it so much. I love it so much. So Brian Stelter is immediately upset. He's like, that's not true. That's not true. You can't say that Trump has already talked to the press more than Biden has in 4 years. First of all, that's what we call an expression. So when I say he has done more in a month than the previous administration did in 4 years, I'm not actually asking you to get out your calculator and tabulate, let's see, Biden did 427 executive actions and Trump did 426. Fact-checked, that's not what I'm talking about. When someone says that someone has done more in the short amount of time than someone did in their entire career, in their entire time doing whatever, that is a hyperbolic expression meant to pit side by side two things that are extraordinarily different in an unusual fashion. Presidents should not really have a large amount of difference in how many times and in what manner they speak to the press. And Biden in his advanced age would go walk up to journalists and he would yell these really weird, incoherent things. I mean, really, near the end of the Biden administration, he would walk up to journalists and he would sort of get in their ear and he'd say, how would you like me to throw you just like my grandfather who is some kind of a... And then he'd get out there and... anyway, I'll have to tell producer Daniel I'm actually a little upset that may be one of the best Biden impressions I've ever done, and he's not in office anymore for me to, actually hang on to that. It really is sad when you see the Democrats desperately trying to rewrite history over expressions anyway, but the just desperation to latch oh, Joe Biden, he was so amazing and wonderful, and we have to somehow keep his corpse afloat. No, it just is not going to be any kind of retroactive historical revisionism that's going to land with voters. It really isn't. So for example here, let's bring up Joe Biden in the Sugar Bowl. Can we get that brought up?
And we're seeing that today. The Sugar Bowl is back on. Kickoff is going to take off very shortly. If I don't get this damn thing done, we're going to be in real trouble.
Again, he's making light right after a serious terrorist attack, but hey, way to go there, Joe. Nothing like that great press demeanor from Joe Biden. Brian later whined on social media. He's like, well, I say that because it's not possible. Obviously, Biden didn't hold nearly as many questions and answer sessions as Trump does. But over the course of 4 years, Biden fielded thousands of questions. It's not possible. It's not possible. I've done the math and the statistics, and it's not possible for Trump to have fielded thousands of questions in 3 weeks. This is a grown man whose argument is, well, actually, dude, you got really serious about an expression because you don't want to admit, like most of the left, like all of the left, does not want to admit that Joe Biden was a really awful president and you covered for him while it was obvious to the country that he was in the most awful of his awfulness he'd ever been. Physically, mentally, socially, international policy-wise, economic policy-wise, social policy-wise, etc. So that brings me on to the last point tonight for bonus tonus, and that would be John Fetterman. Okay. John Fetterman, who I have called a couple of times Senator Betterman, because he recognizes a lot of these flaws in the left. He recognizes that when they stand here and they try to claim that Biden was pure as the driven snow, just a kindly old man, just like good old peanut salesman and grower old Jimmy Carter, then when the left tries to do that, they completely shred, and then they pull out the paper shreds from the bag, and then they shove those back in the shredder and reshred their credibility with the American people. Fetterman recognizes that. He also recognizes that by getting up in front of the country every single ding-dong-dang day and claiming that this is the end of the world as we know it, that's not really effective. And as soon as it's not the end of the world as we know it, and Pete Hegseth doesn't come in and ruin the Department of Defense, and Kristi Noem doesn't come in and ruin the Department of Homeland Security, and Scott Bessent doesn't ruin the Treasury, and you've got RFK, he's not going to ruin the Department of Health and Human Services, and on and on and on and on down the list. That after people recognize you were being the wrong kind of dramatic, that you're really less effective when you cry wolf the next time. Fetterman does recognize that. He does. And he criticizes individuals. He says, I'm willing to speak with the nominees. I'm willing to speak with Trump. And that's got him some good favor, and rightly so. He's also been a lot more normal on international policy than many of the others on the left. However, he is still on the left, and he has voted against almost, if not all, of these Trump nominees. Actually, Producer Daniel, if you're out there in the wild world, if you could fire me a message real quick. Has John Fetterman voted to confirm any of Trump's appointments yet? I thought there was one that, I know that Rubio had like a near unanimous confirmation. And then there was one that was fairly split. It was like 63-65. I don't remember which cabinet secretary that was. John Fetterman is on the left. He is. Dude is a leftist. He is not suddenly going to flip over. Now, could the left drive him out of the Democrat Party? Absolutely. At the moment, though, Fetterman is rather comfortably enjoying being the least insane leftist in kind of the PR function. He is still very far to the left. He is still voting alongside Bernie Sanders and Klobuchar and Gillibrand and Elizabeth Warren and on down the list. And I'm reminding everyone of this very quickly because right now there is, again, a lot of ire. There really was no reason for him to vote against RFK Jr. There was no reason at all for him to vote against Tulsi Gabbard. That was, like, left field does not begin to describe what that was really out there. And yet he did. Don't go looking to the other side for individuals who kind of sort of are bucking against the system, but I don't know. It's like this weird like dating idea. Maybe I can fix them. There's like a crazy person that you should not date or marry or have relations with of any kind. And what is the friend who's telling you all about this wonderful person in their eyes? What do they tell you? I can fix them. If they just had enough love and attention. Guys, who am I talking about in this case? Eric Adams of New York. Eric Adams of New York has been pardoned on any of the corruption charges the Biden DOJ had put against him. There's a lot of speculation that those investigation and corruption charges were because Eric Adams came out against migrants, like the migrant crisis, the illegal migrant crisis, specifically in New York City. And today, Eric Adams has allowed Immigration Customs Enforcement to go through Rikers Island prison and sort through individuals that are suspected of being violent illegal immigrants. You know, checking the citizenship paperwork, as it were. And I've seen some of the posts, some of the people out there saying, I think Eric Adams is ready to be a Republican. No. Get out the water bottle. No, stop it. You don't need... When RFK Jr. was ready to leave the Democratic Party, he did so, and then he made lots of concessions. I still would not go to RFK on a lot of policy advice. Tulsi Gabbard, on some financial policy stuff, she's just a little to the left for my comfort. I'm not going to go to her on certain kinds of policy. Now, do I think that those are good picks and they should be in the administration? Absolutely. Love having them in the administration. They're going to be great secretaries. A great secretary and director, I'm sure. But as for individuals like John Fetterman and Eric Adams, wait for the conversion before you appoint them to being a deacon. Hang on, boys, girls, and squirrels. And that'll save you a lot of heartburn. It will. And I think that as we go through the next couple of weeks and you actually see the Trump administration start to shift into kind of state by state policy, and then through that as well, kind of the financial policy as the Congress starts to get into tax reform and extending the tax cuts and budget reconciliation, which our political editor over at the Daily Signal, Bradley Devlin, tells me is going to be one of the most enjoyable nightmares we've had in a while. You'll see John Fetterman come out and issue what I am certain are some very brain dead takes. Producer Daniel has come through. Way to go, Producer Daniel. On the vote of CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Fetterman abstained from voting, resulting in 74-25. So there you go. I think that's the one that I was thinking of. He didn't vote in favor of John Ratcliffe, but he abstained. Ooh, abstention. Sorry, congressmen who abstain from votes are cowards and clowns 90% of the time. There are a few occasions in which it's a good thing to abstain from votes on things, I suppose. I think there was something that Thomas Massey abstained on a couple of months ago that I didn't necessarily mind his abstention. But as far as an abstention vote, either have the ability to communicate why you're voting yes or why you're voting no. Backing out, you're in Congress. You don't need to back out. Cast your vote. Tell us why. That all said, I think that about does it for Bonus Tonus. I appreciate all of you guys tuning in. It's a blast to get to do this show with you every weeknight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow, it being the beginning of a lovely 4-day weekend and Valentine's Day, we're going to be sharing an interview that we were able to do with a former CIA operative, talk about kind of the history of the CIA. Nothing says romance like the deep state and the corruption of the CIA. And a little bit of quick news. And I'm not going to give you guys relationship or marriage advice. I just gave it to you. You know, don't do the whole I can fix them thing. There you go. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC, produced by Allison Lemons at WIBC, Daniel Elmore, and Lou Scataglia. Take care.